안녕하세요. How are we all? It's great to see you. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, members of the media, and importantly, our youth representatives who are here today. Welcome to the 21st JEJUFORUM for Peace and Prosperity. I'm Sharanjit Lail, and it is a genuine pleasure for me to be here on Jeju Island, the island of peace. I'm also delighted to say that we are broadcasting live on Arirang TV and on the JEJUFORUM's YouTube channel. Now, over the next 90 minutes, we are going to be asking the question that's impacting, of course, the global community, and that is, how do we reimagine multilateralism in a rapidly changing world? And we'll be asking that question to the women and men who are seeking to become the next Secretary General of the United Nations. They will be only the 10th leader of that organization to succeed, of course, Antonio Guterres in 2027. But first, let me introduce our favorite son of South Korea, the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished candidates for the next Secretary General of the United Nations, welcome to you all. As former Secretary General of the United Nations, it is my distinct honor to welcome you all to Jeju, the island of peace. It is truly moving to witness such a gathering of visionary leaders. I feel the passion that fuels your commitment to our collective future. And it is my firm belief that each of you is ready to shoulder the hopes of humanity. Distinguished candidates, let me begin with a candid reflection from one who has walked this path before. To be honest, I don't envy you. When I was campaigning for the office of Secretary General back in 2006, there was no such forum as this, no public stage where candidates could transparently present and contest their visions before the world's people. In that sense, I was fortunate, but I feel for you, this is a very rigorous and demanding process. Be ready for that. And yet, in the same breath, I truly envy you. In my time, I had to seek out every opportunity, moving from capital to capital, often in the shadow of quiet diplomacy. You, however, stand here on the global stage of the JEJUFORUM, where you can articulate your vision with transparency and rigor before the world. That openness, the opportunity to be tested on your merits in the clear light of day, is a privilege I find genuinely precious. Dear candidates, people often speak of the Secretary General of the United Nations as the, quote, president of the world, but I don't agree with this. Or the secular pope, I don't agree with this either. But this is what people would say, have been saying about the post of the Secretary General of the United Nations. But those who have held this position before, including myself, tell the truth that SG, which is Secretary General, is often in reality quoted as the scapegoat. SG is often called a scapegoat. So you should be ready to become a scapegoat. The position demands an immense weight of responsibility, endless reserve of patience, and at times, profound sense of solitude. And yet, I envy you because one of you will walk side by side with the most dedicated people on earth, UN staff who have pledged their lives to the cause of humanity. You will share burdens in the most difficult corners of the globe, and in doing so, forge bonds of fellowship that no title or salary can ever replicate. You will also be supported by the diplomats, business leaders, and civil society organizations who are eager to unite behind your leadership and shape the course of history. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I know all the candidates personally. I have known all of you in person, in fact, without fail. Having worked alongside them for years, I can attest that whoever is elected tomorrow, he or she is fully capable of assuming this office with distinction. And yet, looking at the road ahead, I must confess, again, I do not envy you. Again, this is what I'm telling you. Whoever assumed the office of the Secretary General of the United Nations on January 1st next year will inherit an institution facing a lot of challenges of truly historic proportions. The United Nations is in the grips of a serious financial crisis, its authority questioned, and its credibility strained by relentless calls for reform. The war in Ukraine has entered its fifth year with no clear prospect for a peaceful resolution. At the same time, the conflict in the Middle East, more seriously, the war between the United States and Iran. Though the parties have signed the peace agreement, continue to inflict a profound human and economic and geopolitical cost, devastating consequences for the countries involved and the wider world. On the other hand, the climate crisis grows more urgently with every passing year, maybe every passing second or hour. And now, artificial intelligence, AI, introduces a new dimension of uncertainty that our existing international frameworks are wholly unprepared to address. But there is another side to this, the potential for you to write an epic chapter in the history of the United Nations. In this regard, the next Secretary General of the United Nations will have the rare privilege of rebuilding shattered trust in multilateralism and demonstrating convincingly and concretely that the United Nations can still make a real, tangible difference in the lives of ordinary people everywhere in this world. You will serve as the true architect of the global agenda. I still remember the moments during my own tenure that filled me with the deepest sense of purpose. The day the Paris Climate Change Agreement was adopted, the day the 17 goals of Sustainable Development Goals were adopted and endorsed unanimously by 193 member nations, and the day when the UN Women was established. Those were the days when all the UN member states were united as one. I am proud to have worked with the member state and diligently working UN staff. You will continue to carry on these initiatives. The profound realization that a single collective decision could set a positive course for billions of lives, that sense of meaning is a reward I know you too will come to cherish. For you will be the ones to ignite the hope when the world needs it most. In that regard, I envy you more than anyone else, so you should be ready for that. Excellencies, distinguished Foreign Minister Jo Hyun of Republic of Korea, dear candidates for the next UN Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, I myself was a child of war who, with the help of the United Nations, rose to become a man of peace. The Republic of Korea rose from the ashes of the Korean War of 1950 with the vital support of the United Nations and its member states, having transformed from an aid recipient into a donor nation. Korea is, whether you believe it or not, Korea is the only country in the world, excepting all those regular members of the OECD, that is the only country who has turned from donor receiving to donor giving country. So it's not only the Korean people, there are many developing countries who are really working hard to overcome their poverties. I think Korea can show their examples to become a donor-giving country. That we are very much proud of that. Korea now understands the value of multilateral diplomacy perhaps more deeply than any other one else. Korea will remain your most steadfast partner as you embark on this bold journey. And I personally will always be in your corner. I sincerely hope that the conversation to be held here in Jeju right now will serve as a guiding compass for the next Secretary General and for all harmony. To each of the proud candidates, again, I don't envy you. I don't know why I repeat this message to you. It's because you may soon be frustrated from day 2. Day 1, you will be very happy. Day 2, be prepared for that. And yet, again, I envy you. I envy you. I give you my full support, full support. I wish you courage, clarity of vision, and the greatest succession. It's very important. You are already global citizens. With global vision, global citizen, act like a global citizen. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Muchas gracias. Sheshe. Spasibo большое. Shukran jazilan. 감사합니다.
감사합니다. And what excellent advice. And of course, as a true son of Korea and one of the most respected voices in global diplomacy, we are so grateful for your presence here today, of course, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. And next up, it is my pleasure to invite the Foreign Minister of the Republic of Korea, His Excellency Cho Hyun, to deliver his remarks. Minister, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. Well, it is an honor to address this distinguished people here in Jeju. Looking at the candidates gathered here, I cannot help but feel a profound sense of déjà vu. Although Secretary General Ban said that there had been no such beauty contest at his time, there was one. So it takes me to 20 years ago. I was accompanying then Foreign Minister Ban to Davos, the first and the only beauty contest held in Davos. And at the airport, when I had a chance, I said to him an unsolicited advice, Minister, whichever questions are addressed to you, make your answer short, sweet, and simple. Well, despite my advice, he gave enough long, sophisticated, eloquent answers. And the rest is history. Well, so I talked to the candidates. Speak up and show your true colors, as did Secretary General Ban Ki-moon 20-some years ago. On a serious note, I am compelled to compare the challenges of the time and now. Well, we had war in the Middle East. The war in Iraq just finished at the time. Now we have the war in Iran at the critical inflection point. Back then, the civil war in Darfur just finished. Now, today, Sudan continues to be raged by internal war. 20 years ago, achieving MDGs felt so ambitious, too ambitious. Today, achieving SDG seems to be ever more elusive. In that respect, I think we have been fragmented. Unlike the catchphrasing word of reinventing the fragmented world. So what is to be done? The only big difference is that the United Nations today has become more and more invisible, less and less visible. So it should be the job of the next Secretary General to make it visible and lead the world. Well, in several months' time, one of the 5 candidates will emerge the Secretary General of the United Nations. She or he will jump into the cockpit of the world plane. And I think all of you are qualified, but whoever climbs the rudder to the cockpit will say to the rest of the world, to go through this turbulence, fasten your seatbelt. Well, since this will be the most unenviable job, as said by Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, We all owe our thanks to you for your courage in stepping up. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister Cho. Yes, some brave candidates indeed, as we've been hearing. Now, we're going to move on to our candidates who are vying to become a Secretary General, but one of them couldn't be with us here today, and that is Michelle Bachelet. She has kindly sent us a video message instead. She is, of course, the former President of Chile and the former United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. Let's hear her message.
Excellencies, dear friends, I deeply regret not being able to join you in person today. A scheduling conflict made it impossible. I hope we will have new opportunities to talk about peace and youth soon, but I did not want to miss this moment because what you are discussing matters enormously, and it connects directly to why I am running for Secretary General. The United Nations was built on a simple but radical idea that nations, however different, can choose cooperation over confrontation. That idea is under pressure today, but I have spent my life proving that dialogue can achieve what force never will. Multilateralism is dialogue in practice, and building consensus, even when it seems impossible, is what I have done my entire life, as President of Chile twice, as founding Executive Director of the UN Women, and as High Commissioner for Human Rights. The question is not whether we need multilateralism. The question is what kind? One that prevents crises before they explode, one that amplifies the voices of all the member states of the UN, and one that is firmly anchored in the principles and values of the UN Charter. Strengthening that cooperation requires a Secretary General who knows when to facilitate, who can build the room where agreement becomes possible, hold the channel open when parties refuse to speak. That requires patience, discretion, and the trust of all sides. And that trust must include everyone at the table, especially those who have been kept out of the room for too long. Young people above all, you know your communities, you see what is happening on the ground. You have ideas, energy, and a profound stake in getting this right. We already have Resolution 2250 on youth, peace, and security. We need to implement it and apply the same logic everywhere. Young people must be at the table, not as observers, but as co-authors of the decisions that shape our world. I also believe we cannot have peace without development, and we cannot have peace without human rights. These three pillars must be treated as one, because much of what we call inevitable, conflict, displacement, suffering, was actually preventable. Prevention requires presence, investment, and the courage to act early. That is why I offer experience, commitment, and the deep conviction that the multilateralism, when it works, changes lives. I look forward to continuing this conversation with you in person very soon. Thank you.
Madame Bachelet, thank you very much for that message. And now, please allow me to welcome our very brave candidates who are vying to become the next Secretary General of the United Nations. And they will join us on stage in alphabetical order. So let me invite Maria Fernanda Espinosa, former President of the UN General Assembly and Ecuador's former Foreign Minister. Please join us on stage. We also have Rafael Grossi, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Come and join us, please, sir. And next, Rebecca Greenspan, the Secretary General of the UN Trade and Development, or UNCTAD, until recently, and as well, former Vice President of Costa Rica. We have Carolyn Rodriguez-Burkett, Guyana's ambassador to the United Nations and former foreign minister. Welcome. And finally, we have Macky Sall, former president of Senegal. And of course, President Sall will be speaking in French, and we have interpretation available for you all. So once again, welcome. We heard from Secretary General Ban earlier about what brave individuals you all are. We heard from the Minister Cho as well, saying that this is an unenviable position, of course. And of course, we're going to get into the conversation in just a little bit. But just before we begin, a brief word on the format. Because in the interest of fairness and equal time and opportunities, each response is going to be limited to 2 minutes. That's right. That's not very much. And of course, if you go a little bit beyond that, I am going to have to intervene, I'm afraid, so apologies in advance. And of course, later in the program, I'll also be putting questions to you from the very important audience members that we have here today. They are the youth representatives who've joined us. And as you heard from that message from Michelle Bachelet as well, we must include them as they will inherit the world that the UN and all of us create. But first, of course, we are gathered here on a very significant anniversary for Korea. And of course, we know, many of us from Korea will know what that is. And that was in 1950, this was the day of the outbreak of the Korean War. Of course, the legacy of that makes us even more determined to achieve peace by all means. And Jeju is, as a result of that, become famous the world over as the island of peace. And of course, it is also a place of extraordinary natural beauty. So I'd like to begin with a very simple question. What is the one experience you've had here in Jeju that has particularly stayed with you? And you have 1 minute for this question. This is just testing your timekeeping to begin with, but 1 minute for this one, and later you'll have 2 minutes. So let's start with you, Maria.
Well, thank you. Thank you to the organizers. And I have to say, yes, my heart beating because of the beauty of the place, because of the kindness of its people. But I have to say one thing that I have kept deep in my heart is the Genio women. These are women from this island that go down deep in the sea to harvest seafood, and they can be, in the water for more than 10 minutes without an oxygen tank. This is unbelievable, and it shows the knowledge, the wisdom, the resilience, the quiet leadership that I see and recognize very much in the soul of the Korean people. So kudos for the Genio women that have shown endurance, resilience, and deep knowledge. I'm touched by that.
Fantastic. You kept to your minute. Rafael.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Indeed, we know the history. We know what this place represents in good and bad, and the fact that it has become a place that represents peace says it all. But the one thing I was very happy about is that in record time, I got an ID. And in these times where welcoming people and protecting people becomes really challenging, that speaks miles about the welcoming attitude and having us for this debate, which we are all looking forward to, is unique. So looking forward to listen to my colleagues and having my bit as well.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
That's great. Efficiency, we like that. Rebecca.
Well, really, yesterday, the children that sang to us and hug us and remind us of the warmth and the welcoming of the people of Korea, they were so wonderful. And at the same time, looking at that and thinking about these children, wonderful children, you have to remind everybody of why we are here, yes? Because there are many children in the world that are going through war, through hunger, through health issues and disease. And so let's all come together again to cooperate, to really save all the children of the world, to really make, the children that we saw yesterday the norm and not the exception.
Wonderful, thank you. And Carolyn?
Thank you, Sharonjit. 3 things. First, it was the stone walls last evening. And between those stone walls, there were spaces. And I see that as deltas for progress, even when there is a wall. Secondly, the rain, like a sense of renewal. Yesterday, today. And thirdly, the greenery, just beautiful as well. Greenery that we would all like to see all over our countries. And I come from a country with 80% forest cover, so I was at home. And lastly, just the hospitality of the Korean people. Gamsamida.
Gamsamida indeed, thank you. And finally, Maki.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Mon, dear Secretary General and the government of Korea. Most people came to Jeju and see the beautiful of this island. As a geologist, I came to Jeju and I see the beautiful volcano, beautiful rocks. That shows that this island was created by huge and powerful forces below surface. That's why today we all know Jeju as the land of peace. That is why I'm honored and very excited to be here with all candidates, and I congratulate them to talk about what we have together, this fragmented world. I hope we will have a very dynamic and very positive discussion. Thank you.
Wonderful. So from the perspective of a geologist, how wonderful to hear that. Brilliant. So the first starter question out of the way. This is now where we get to the real gist of the conversation, and it is what we've heard this morning as well from Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, the issue of multilateralism being so much under strain. And we know that the system globally is fragmented at the moment. I don't need to list it out. There are so many things happening right now. Lots of growing questions about whether existing institutions like the UN are fit for purpose. So alphabetically again, I'm going to start with you, Maria, because many people believe, of course, that the UN system is becoming ineffectual. It's a lot less effective, particularly as divisions between major powers deepen. What do you see as the greatest weakness in today's multilateral system, and how do you plan to fix it? 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. First of all, I think that we have always experienced division in the world. The UN was born out of division. I think the context is perhaps different today after 80 years of history. And I would like to mention 3 keywords because time is short. What are the issues that we need to rebuild and restore? No? Because we're very good at diagnosis and less good at solutions. Number 1 is trust. We really need to rebuild trust in the organization, trust among member states, and trust between the Secretary General and the Secretariat and the member states. And this is done if you are perceived, not just say, but just perceived as an impartial, honest broker. Impartiality means that you can be legitimate to all, serve all, and bring all the parties together. You have to be, as Secretary General, partial only to the Charter and to international law. The second keyword is performance. I think the UN is experiencing the biggest implementation gap in history. The promises that are written in the Charter, the commitments we sign, the resolutions we adopt, and yet the people on the ground are not seeing how the UN is improving their daily lives, how they live in a safer environment, how they can look at the future with hope. So to close the implementation gap, I would use another keyword, accountability. Accountability. there is a need for a new and renewed accountability infrastructure. And the third, my time is up, but at least I would just mention, convene and partner. The UN is the beating heart of multilateralism, but has the responsibility and the legitimacy to bring all regions, all actors, banks, the private sector, and of course member states together to solve the current challenges of our times.
Wonderful. Thank you for almost meeting your 2-minute mark. And it's all about trust, performance, and convening, which is your 3 points. Rafael, I'm going to come to you about another issue that came up this morning in the leadership conversation, and that is about the smaller groupings. We heard a lot about ASEAN from the former Indonesian president, as well as from Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Those smaller groupings, such as G20, all the other alliances out there, MIGTO as well, we heard about, they are all there to tackle global challenges. So do these arrangements strengthen the UN, or do they risk sidelining it?
It can go both ways. The thing is how we go about it. The existence and the presence of other groupings, and then you could, of course, categorize this in many different ways. You have organizations, institutions that do exist, including within the UN system, which did not exist back in 1945. But you have these groupings, and often one hears this argument that you are putting across, that the UN perhaps is not reflecting the world as it is, and why should it when we have the G7 or the G20 or the BRICS or the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and we could continue enumerating them. The existence of these groupings I see as a strength, in the sense that they reflect a number of circumstances. In some cases is a grouping that came together because of a specific situation, like the G20 after the 2008 crisis. In some other cases, like the G8 before G7. Now it is a political strategic evolution. BRICS is a reply to the gathering of other types of developed economies. So all of this is there, and through them we can, at the UN system or from the UN system, get views that are reflecting this particular set of problems. But at the end of the day, the UN continues to be the only sole global platform, because all these groupings, in all their beauty and effectiveness, cannot reflect global preoccupations. They reflect partial visions, and rightly so. But this is why we have, and we will continue to have, the UN.
Well said, thank you. Rebecca Greenspan, we've heard a lot about issues such as climate change, artificial intelligence as well is a key one, as well as global health. Of course, we've come out of the pandemic a few years ago. We know how that ended. So how should the UN work more closely, and particularly in your role at UNCTAD, you must have done very closely with the private sector, while, of course, maintaining its independence and legitimacy?
Yeah, let me first say that part of the thing with the global challenges is that we can fragment our actions, but we cannot fragment our problems. And that's why we have to get together to be able to solve the problems. When we act alone, we don't solve the problems. We just deepen them. And with respect to the partnering, I really believe that the UN has to change the culture. We think that everything has to happen in the UN. And this 2026 is different than 1945, in a good sense too. In 1945, maybe all the capacities were in the UN. But today, countries have more capacities. There are new regional organizations that have capacities. The private sector and the civil society has more capacities. So we have to learn to partner. As I say, the UN is unique but it's not alone. So we need to include the private sector in the conversation, especially, for example, in the frontier of knowledge and the frontier of technology. For responsible AI and to close the gaps in the digital space, to be able to face global health and the global challenges. So we need to include the private sector. Obviously, we have to do our due diligence, but we won't lose independence in doing that. On the contrary, if we don't do that, we will lose relevance. And I think that that's really the challenge. The UN has to learn how to partner with the private sector, not only in asking resources, but in harnessing the capacities and the knowledge that is there with them and with, as I said, civil society, regional organizations that can really help the UN to get better.
Well done. So partnership with the private sector, absolutely crucial. Carolyn, turning to you next. The UN, of course, we've heard, is under growing financial pressure. There's lots of reforms that are being put in place. They remain a major challenge as well. So as Secretary General, what are the 2 areas that you would protect above and beyond at all costs? And what is the one part of the system that you are prepared to change significantly?
Thank you. That's giving a lot of power to the Secretary General. But let me say that what we have learned during this reform process is that the resident coordinator system on the ground has improved delivery by the UN. And I think that as we go forward in this reform process, we must protect that and we must strengthen that. And what I've been hearing as well from the largest donors to the UN is that they would like to see more impact on the ground. And this is one way of having impact on the ground. So I would say that is one thing that we should protect and we should strengthen. I wouldn't want to preempt the decision of member states in terms of the structural reforms, because that reform will change the face of what the UN looks like. But what I think is important to do is to make sure that member states have all the information that they need to make evidence-based decisions. So whether they decide to merge UN agencies or to merge functions, for example, that it must be guided by evidence-based information. So that is something that I would certainly want to see. Now, it is highly likely that by the time the new Secretary General is there, some of these decisions are already made. And so it's a matter of implementation. But I also believe that in any organization, much less one that is 80 years old, that reform must be a continuous process, and adjustments must be a continuous process. The developments that we have seen over these last 5-6 years in terms of AI and so on, the developments before that would have taken decades. This one is took just a few years. And so we have to be prepared to be dynamic and to move with the times and to change with the times.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Carolyn. Finally, President Macky Sall, of course, many countries in the global south, yours included, argue that the UN still very much reflects the power structures of the past. So what specific change would you make to the organization as Secretary General for it to be more responsible and more responsive?
Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais partir de la date de création.
I would like to begin with the date of birth of the United Nations, 1945. We were 51 countries that signed. Now we are 193 countries, and the organization is working still in the same way, which shows that there is a gap between what the world has become and what the organization used to be. And that gap is even more important nowadays, that we are facing even bigger challenges. Those challenges are terrorism, for example, security-related challenges, artificial intelligence, the less access of people and to knowledge or financing, also the violations of human rights. That is why we need to change the organization, because it is an important platform, and it is the only one, and it is a universal platform that has the vocation to put the world around one table and to decide about the future of the world. And in order to bring about solutions to this world, to these challenges, I believe that we need a change, a shift in paradigm by a new redistribution, a fair redistribution. And it assumes that we have capital market access, financial markets. Not only that, but also technologies. We talk a lot about artificial intelligence, but it shouldn't be something that is reserved to privileged countries. That is why we need to reform the organization. First of all, the secretariat, and then also the institution. But I believe also that member states have to participate in this reform, and of course, opening the Security Council and our working ways.
Merci.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Thank you all for keeping to your 2 minutes at the start. And you know, so importantly said, reallocating resources is needed at a time like this. But we're now moving on very quickly, because we have limited time, of course, to the very important question of peace and security. And in fact, the world, according to statistics, and of course you can turn the news on and you can find out yourself, is actually experiencing its highest number of armed conflicts since the end of the Second World War. And this is a terrifying thing, and of course, which it makes the role of the next Secretary General even more important and fundamental. So, Maria, I'm turning to you. Of all the crises, and there are many, as we know, facing the world today, what issue would be your top priority on day one in the job?
My answer would be here. My answer would be that you cannot rank conflicts to say this conflict is more important than conflict B or C. Every place where civilians suffer, every place where lives, livelihoods, hope, the future is hurt, is the place for the United Nations to act, and to act early. That's why my campaign and my narrative is about prevention, is about early engagement, is about prevention as a culture, as a way of operating within the system. I think the world wants to see a Secretary General that is foot on the ground, that is present, that is persistent, that is where she needs to be. And of course, this is absolutely vital. When you look at what is happening in the world, you're right. We are living the highest numbers of armed conflicts since the Second World War. This means that perhaps the UN didn't prevent enough, didn't act early enough, and did not respond enough. The responsibility of the Secretary General is to act early, to persist and be present, to deploy all the machinery and the infrastructure that the UN has on the ground to decrease the suffering of civilian people, to protect people. And when I say protect people, it includes also protecting the peacekeepers on the ground. We have seen yesterday an excellent resolution approved by the Security Council, because the duty of the UN is to protect people, to prevent conflict, to protect people, but also protect peacekeepers. And here, my thoughts with the Korean peacekeepers and with the 4,500 peacekeepers that have lost their lives serving under the UN flag. So no conflict is important than another conflict. All conflicts are the work of the UN, the responsibility of the UN, and the responsibility of a present Secretary General.
Thank you for that. Now, moving on to the big nuclear issues, and of course we have the head of the IAEA himself right here. The Security Council, we know, is increasingly divided, and of course nuclear risks are growing, as we all know, including, of course, the ongoing challenges that are posed by North Korea in this region. So how can the UN preserve and strengthen the global non-proliferation treaty?
Well, we should remember that the creation of the UN comes in the wake of the use of nuclear weapons, and that the first resolution of the General Assembly was about it. We have to see, and perhaps it's a sobering conclusion that 80 years after that, the issue of nuclear weapons continue to haunt us, and not in a way that seems to be going in the right direction. We see that after a relative long period of gradual decrease in nuclear arsenals, this has stopped. We see again the curve slowly but steadily picking up. The issue, of course, which resonates so vividly here in this country of the DPRK, but not only there. The situations that we are trying to grapple with. I'm coming from Bürgenstock last weekend, where we are still trying to contain a problem before it becomes yet another case of proliferation of nuclear weapons. And what is also intriguing and concerning is that we listen more and more a conversation in countries that heretofore have abstained from having nuclear weapons, asking themselves whether this world, this fragmented world, does not warrant them reviewing that. In some places, some are saying, well, the protection, between quotes, that we are having from countries that do have nuclear weapons, perhaps is not rock solid, as we thought it was. So shouldn't we have nuclear weapons? And believe you me, although we have a few countries, 9, having nuclear weapons, the world with the degree of conflictivity that we are having, and you are quoting the number of conflicts with 20, 25 or 37 countries with nuclear weapons, would be very, very dangerous indeed.
Thank you for that message. Now, Rebecca, a Secretary General can, of course, act quietly behind the scenes. You know, quiet diplomacy is truly powerful. Or, of course, they could be acting very publicly. So, an easy question, but potentially a complex one for you. What kind of diplomacy will you rely on most as Secretary General?
No, thank you very much. Let me first say that I have proposed the need to restructure the office of the Secretary General, precisely because I think that you cannot outsource mediation and you cannot outsource active diplomacy. The Secretary General has to have the capacities in the office of the Secretary General to be able to be active, to be present, to be visible, and to be effective. So, first point. Second point, it depends. Let me give you 2 examples. In Sudan, right now, what we need to do is to put the spotlight in Sudan, because we know that what we saw in Al-Fasher can happen again. So what we need is to be visible. What we need is to be outspoken. What we need is to call for the attention on what is happening in Sudan. We need to call for a humanitarian ceasefire immediately, and the UN should be an actor that will allow more coordination in the different tracks that are today in negotiating. So there are many tracks of negotiation. There is no coordination, so we need to call it out. But, for example, in the Black Sea Initiative that, you know, as you know, I negotiated with Russia, with Ukraine, and with Turkey precisely for that problem, we needed quiet diplomacy. We needed a diplomacy that first was able to talk to the actors, see what were the possibilities, and act accordingly. So in that case, quiet diplomacy was necessary, much more discreet diplomacy. to be able to have a text, to negotiate without exposing anybody, and do that in a context where we were not ending the war, but we were avoiding a world food crisis within a war. So we were able to get an agreement because quiet diplomacy was the way to go.
So a combination of both, and as you mentioned, the Black Sea Initiative, where, of course, Ukrainian grain was available to move again to the rest of the world. Carolyn, Rebecca just mentioned Sudan. We know that conflicts in those places, Sudan, Myanmar in this region, and many others, of course, tend to fade from international headlines. They don't get the international attention required. So how would you ensure that long-running crises are not forgotten?
I think there are several ways we can do this. One of the things that I've noticed is that while we may have a lot of discussions in the UN on a particular crisis, the media chooses which of these crises they want to highlight. And there are 2 or 3 of them that will be in the headlines all the time. And so I think that we have to find better ways, the Secretary General in particular, to communicate what is happening out there. Because as we have seen in recent times, there's nothing like a frozen crisis. Any day one can just come at the top of the agenda. And so communication, I think it's very, very important to do that. But not only the Secretary General, we have all 193 member states represented at the UN. And I think that discussion with member states, whether it's in smaller groups, a crisis from a particular area, discussing with them. And I've seen member states use the platforms at the UN as well to promote different issues. And this is one way I think we can work together, the Secretary General and member states, to keep these, I wouldn't call them forgotten, but those that do not get the kind of global attention that they need. But I'm also conscious that there are times when you have to choose whether you're going to make a public statement or you're going to do things quietly to allow for solutions to progress. And I think one has to discern when that is necessary. Because I've also seen cases where when you come out too quickly with a public statement, you remove yourself from being part of the solution as Secretary General. And so, as I said, discernment, versatility, and knowing which of the options you should choose for each one.
Good response, thank you. And within 2 minutes too, excellent. Now moving to another question, and again, reflecting on what Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said earlier, the role of the Secretary General is so difficult. It's an unenviable role, and he doesn't envy you guys for going up for it. There's so many difficult choices that the Secretary General has to make for the UN. So how would you choose to invest the political energy? Which crises do you think will deserve the UN's immediate attention and resources once you take office?
The first error is to give a certain hierarchy among these different crises, because there are so many crises that threaten the peace and that requires our whole attention. And every crisis that makes human suffer and that has an impact on the economic world is important. So we should not rank different crises. And for example, the war in Sudan, where several thousand, hundreds and millions of people die and who become refugees, who suffer in extreme conditions, should not be forgotten. And all these crises all over the world are important. Of course, there are crises that are bigger in, for example, the crisis in Israel and also the Hormuz Strait. Those are big crises that have a big consequence on the global economic environment, of course. And we can think about the Russia-Ukraine crisis and different climate change crises. crises, we can think about bigger crises that also get a lot of attention from the media, but we should use all our diplomatic network and all our resources to prevent these conflicts and crises. And this is the work that the Secretary General has to do, and is the work of the UN. So therefore, we have to rebuild the trust between the member states of the UN. And we have to build the trust so that we can, in a responsible manner, fight against these crises and to bring our whole world towards a future that is more stable.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you for that. Yes, absolutely. Having to allocate all those resources to every crisis in the world is a difficult one, and rebuilding trust. And speaking of rebuilding trust, we're moving on to our final theme, and that is, of course, the reason why we have so many young people amongst us in the audience. It's about, of course, coming up with issues at the UN and elsewhere around technology, around development, around climate, that will impact not only the world, but future generations, and this is why it's so important to be a part of this conversation that includes the young. So, Maria Fernanda Espinosa, young people are not only demanding change from outside the UN, many are already working from within the system. How would you ensure that younger staff have a stronger voice in shaping the UN's future?
Well, I think I try to move away from the tokenistic approach. Yes, young people should participate, they should be part of the solution. My experience shows me that the most efficient teams are intergenerational teams. To combine wisdom, institutional memory with innovation and cutting-edge knowledge. So the way you build your teams has to be intergenerational. Number two, younger staff members should not inherit a UN as it is. They should be part of the new design and the constant reform of the organization. Number three, they should receive what they need in terms of a career development plan. This looks like common sense, but it doesn't happen. No, a career development plan, a skills development plan. No, to make sure that they are going to be fit for the role they're going to play, and to really be committed with a high morale and with a sense of mission. And I think that goes well with the UN staff, because they are the most qualified and the most committed. And I think we need the human talent of the UN, and of course, young human talent. Believe me, it's not an issue of looking good or of optics. It is that intergenerational teams are more impactful and provide better results. So, of course, my team, when Secretary General, my own team and my own office is going to be intergenerational. If you look at my team now, most of my advisors are under 30. And one is standing over there, actually. They are below 30. So I fully trust the creativity, the innovation, the wisdom, the transformational capacity of younger generations.
Wonderfully said. And of course, if any of you are looking to join, there you go. You can look in your cabinet if you do get the role. Rafael Grossi, of course, some young people, and we've been talking a lot about this, they've lost their trust in institutions like the UN. How would you rebuild trust and give young people a real crucial role in the organization?
Well, first of all, they need to understand what's going on, because they don't. And I don't blame them. As a father of 8, yes.
Well done.
Young adults and one teenager, I can tell you that the UN does not exist in their world. They don't care about the UN, and that the UN basically does not care for them. For everything we can say, all these phrases, as you were saying, we have all these slogans. The younger generations either don't understand, don't see the UN, or don't care. And so we should ask ourselves the tough questions. Why is this? One very important aspect, I believe, is also communication. And I don't think we communicate because there are things that are important for the younger generations that need to be transmitted, that they are transmitting in a very poor way, in a way that does not resonate, and not through the channels that they use these days. So this is, as a communicator yourself, this is a very, very important aspect, how we tell the story. Secondly, I don't believe that the issues of youth are solved with the creation of offices in the United Nations. I don't think that is the way. That doesn't move the needle. Policies and good policies are, by definition, for the younger generation. When we are looking at the SDGs that Secretary Ban Ki-moon left us, who are these for? I mean, when we talk about getting rid of nuclear weapons or preventing nuclear weapons or solving issues related to hunger or poverty or health, we are doing this for the younger generation. So I believe that trust is going to be rebuilt quite spontaneously the day they see that the UN is really solving issues and they understand how this is done.
Absolutely, and I hope that once you, and if you become Secretary General, your 8 children will start to pay attention to what happens at the UN. Now, Rebecca, for many young people, of course, one of the key themes we've been talking about for this entire Jeju Forum is multilateralism. So how would you convince young people that multilateralism truly matters and the UN truly matters in their daily lives?
Well, first of all, I will agree that we will rebuild their trust and we will convince them that multilateralism is important and what we do is important if we address the problem that they really face today. Yes? They are worried about their jobs. They are worried about quality jobs. 1 in 5 young people today in the world have informal jobs, not quality jobs. They are not in training. They are not in education. So they want to see us solving that problem. They want to see us solving the problems of war that are displacing them from their own homes, from their own families. So I agree that the first thing is to address the problems that they face. But we also have this problem in the UN, and you know, we have a problem. I ask you, do you know what is the percentage of people under 30 in the UN staff? I guess 4%.
Oh my.
4%. We have closed the doors of the UN to young people. And I think that that is our first task. We need to open the doors again for them. They cannot even apply for the jobs. You know, even the first entry point to the UN has been really almost non-existent in the last period because of financial problems. So the exams for the underrepresented countries where the young people can come to the UN has not even taken place. So let's open the doors of the UN for young people, for them to be part of the staff, part of the innovation, part of the ideas, part of what we do every day. So they will change the world.
Absolutely. And of course, yes, applause, please. And we need to raise that dismally low statistic, 4% of young people at the UN. Now, Carolyn, of course, young people stand to benefit enormously. In fact, we all do from AI. This is something that we've talked about a lot at this forum as well, and responsible AI in particular. But of course, young people could also not benefit from AI. There are so many jobs that may be, of course, non-existent for them in the future. So how would you ensure that young voices will help shape the rules on artificial intelligence?
Thank you. I think that there are different ways that we can do this. And just to come back to the point made earlier, I think there are 2 ways that we should engage young people. One is getting young people in the UN system, but also in all of the processes that the UN is involved in, young people must be consulted. So as shapers and also as contributors to policies that the UN is involved in. I was involved, and I know Raphael says he doesn't like the creation of offices, but I was one of the co-facilitators that facilitated the process to establish the youth office of the UN. And we had a consultation on Zoom. 350 young people signed in from all over the world and contributed to that process and shaped that process and demanded that the head of that office is not older than 35 years old. So that was one very good example. In the AI governance, again, we must involve them because I think, not as onlookers only, they're the ones, I think, that are more prone to using the technology and showing us how this could be beneficial for our world. The older ones are sometimes a bit hesitant about new technology, but I think young people, they're able to tell us. And one thing I've noticed in my time, and I'm still not so old, it would take 10 years to accumulate a certain amount of knowledge. That now is in the hands of young people. And I think they're good at analysis as well. And so I agree that we shouldn't be tokenistic toward young people, as Maria said, and involve them fully in the AI governance discussion. And I know that that discussion is a difficult one, but we must have young people in that as well.
Thank you for that. Now, President Macky Sall, with 2030 approaching, we know that will be the end of the Sustainable Development Goals, and we know they will remain off track by the time we hit that target. So what would come after the SDGs, and what should the central priority of the next global development agenda be?
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. After the MDGs, we followed them with the SDGs, and also to fight against poverty and to protect the planet and, of course, the environment. However, nowadays, the question that we have to ask ourselves is what are the challenges after 2030? I think that the challenges we will be facing after 2030 is resilience, mostly. Resilience facing shocks that are becoming more frequent, climatic shocks, also sanitary shocks, especially after the pandemic, shocks because of the lack of financing, because of the lack of opportunities. How can we organize this resilience? How can we build this resilience? I believe that we need to put in place a global consortium so that we can go above and beyond the 2030 agenda in order to bring about the righteous answers, also in terms of financing for developing countries, and also that way with all other countries and member states, after 2030, we'll be able to set new goals and go towards them. If I had one more minute, talking about youth, I could talk about two things. First of all, the organization that is the United Nations has to open more channels and give more opportunities to the youth. But most important, among all the human beings, the population that we have on our planet, about 1/3 of them do not have the adequate education. So we have to take care of the jobs for our young people.
Thank you for that. Yes, absolutely, because the SDGs is so fundamental for the world that we create, that the world that the future generations will inherit. And speaking about those future generations, we have them here in the audience. We can now move to the questions that some of them are posing to the future Secretary General. So let me now go to our first question, which comes from Choi Hye-rin, a bachelor's graduate from Jeju Halla University. Hye-rin, I believe you're here somewhere. Can we have the microphone for you, and can you pose your question to the candidates, please. Yes, do we have a microphone? I believe I see you there. Is that you? Yes, perfect. Can somebody get her a microphone, please? Kamsahamnida. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. As a young entrepreneur in the cultural and creative sector, I frequently see how culture bridges divides far more easily than traditional politics. So given today's intense geopolitical fragmentation, how would you, as Secretary General, strategically use the cultural and creative industries as a tool to rebuild trust between conflicting nations and revitalize multilateralism from the ground up? Thank you.
Thank you, Hierin. And this is, of course, open to all of you who would like to respond. Yes, Maria, followed by Rebecca. Yeah. Maria, you start first.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for that very important question. Sometimes people say that culture is soft power. I think culture and intercultural dialogue and the possibility of understanding the diversity of perspectives should be the hardcore of diplomacy and dialogue. So it's extremely important. Believe me, when I was president of the General Assembly, the day I think I was the most popular is when I invited BTS to join me. The K-pop culture of Korea has gone all over the world and brought a mutual understanding, energy, the ability to speak to different cultures. Not to speak about Korean series, which are at the heart of my own family household, but to say that a culture builds bridges is the hardcore, not the soft power, but the strong power of diplomacy and mutual understanding. The role of UNESCO is absolutely critical on this. And as Secretary General, I will ensure that intercultural dialogue, that culture itself is at the center of the work we do.
Absolutely, and who can beat Korean culture, right? Demon Hunters, BTS, you name it. Rebecca?
Can I just make the comment that I am freezing here?
Not great for climate change.
Yes. No. It's because we women have a lower blood pressure, you know. So the problem is who controls the air conditioning.
Please, can we bring the temperature up, please? Well said.
Yeah, let me just go to the question of the young lady. Let me first say that I was really glad about your question because when I reformed UNCTAD, we created a special department on creative industries. And I think that this is a very powerful tool, not only to maintain culture, but to allow all the workers in the cultural space to really make a living. And it's very important for small countries, it's very important for the islands, for example. And really, creative industries are a huge part of the economy, but it's not accounted for, it's not measured, and so many times we don't take the right decisions and the right policies with respect to supporting the cultural workers and the cultural actors in the country. My second point, and I will completely agree with Maria on this, is that really culture allows us to share humanity. Yes, it's really a space where we can understand each other, we can communicate, we can exchange, and we can do something that is very central to peace, that is allow for inclusive identities, to bring to your own identity many of the other expressions in the other cultures. So really great, and thank you for bringing that to the floor.
We will move to our next question. And I have to say, creative industries, as you say, intangible benefits of creative industries. I'm a chancellor of a university that celebrates creative industries, so very, very excited about the potential for that. Next up, we have Musa Elhem. Musa is a master's student from Sung Kyun Kwan University. You have a question, and I hope we can get the mic to you quickly because we are running out of time. Musa.
Trust in multilateral institutions is declining, especially among young generation. So my question is, what is the first concrete change you would make as a Secretary General in your first year to make them believe that the UN works for them?
Absolutely. Let's start with you, Carolyn, followed by Maggie Sal. Yes.
Thank you for that question. And I think that we have failed you, actually, and all the young people, in not telling the story of the UN and the achievements of the UN. Many do not know that when they fly in an airplane, that the rules of the sky, the UN is involved in that. That the food standards that we set, that it is the UN there. That the first responders sometimes in the humanitarian field, it's the UN there. That the children and the improvement in education for them, that it was the UN there as well. And so we have failed in communicating that. And as we're in the 80th year, the people who witnessed war back then, they have passed on. And so I think communication is important in terms of what the UN has done, but also in terms of the challenges we face and the solutions as well, and how young people can be involved in those solutions. Because one of the things that is overlooked sometimes is that the UN is the place where we set the norms of the world that we all agree to live by. And the UN is irreplaceable in that respect. There's no other organization that can do that. And so I think communication is important for us to make you believe in multilateralism, but also for you to choose diplomacy.
Thank you. Maggie.
Merci beaucoup. En vérité, nous avons un
In
problème
fact,
de communication.
we do have a communication issue with the youth, with the young people. However, the UN for the last 80 years did a lot. Without the actions of the UN, I believe that the wars would be even more devastating. I believe that we were able to avoid a lot of conflicts and a lot of wars because of the work that we made at the UN. And every time we discuss an issue at the UN, it is because we want the humanity to advance. Every time we develop a vaccine, it's for the health of the world, and it is for the young people that communicate and live throughout social media and also very new phenomena. And I believe that the institutional, classic, and also very old and demoded communication has to change. And I believe that what UN does is actually for the purpose and for the future of the new generation, except that we need to communicate that by a language that the young people understand.
Thank you. So both of you, communication is key. We need to earn the trust of the young people. We quickly have two last questions from the young people in the audience, and then of course we are going to have to wrap up with the concluding remarks. I'm going to go now to Dugagjin Osmanaj, who's a prospective graduate student from Sung Kyun Kwan University. Dugagjin, you have a question? Yes. Thank you.
The 2020s have shown that we live in a time when wars are becoming more frequent and international norms are being increasingly challenged. This decade can also be called the decade of AI. So my question is just simply, do you think AI can positively aid the UN stopping conflicts from escalating, and if so, how?
Okay, who would like to take that? Rafael, would you like to mention that?
It can, and it can bring problems. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I think it is very clear that AI is already in our lives. We talk about it as it was, something that is coming. It's already in everything we do. There are debates within the UN and international organizations as to how to govern it or control it. And there are already from the supply side groupings that have already been established among the companies or producers of rare earths or cutting-edge technologies that are already organized. I think we have to be prudent in this area to make sure that we strike the right balance between having the dynamism that is going to be helping economies, is going to be helping education, innovation, and so forth, at the same time avoiding excesses and the absence of the human-in-the-loop factor, which is at the end of the day what we need. Some people have referred to even the possibility of having an IEA for AI, which may sound flattering, but I don't agree. Contrary to what people may believe. I think the algorithmic dimension is rather different from an area where you have nuclear material accountability and facilities that can be inspected. We have to be, I think, prudent in believing that we can have systems of control that are really effective. Having an illusion of verification is worse than having none at all.
Thank you for that. Now I'm just going to move on to the last two questions. They're both from Seo-Yongs. So we have Seo-Yong Choi, undergraduate student, Jeju National University, and Seo-Yong Yang, undergraduate student from Jeju National University. If you can both identify yourself, let's start with Seo-Yong Choi first. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. My question is, among the many global challenges we face today, and what do you think is the most overlooked issues that young people should pay more attention to? Thank you.
Thank you, Seo-Yong Choi. Let's get the question from Seo-Yong Yan, who is also here, and that's about the SDGs. Let's hear that question. We'll take both those questions and then, of course, finally conclude with your responses. Seo-Yong Yang, are you here? Ah, there you are. Thank you. Go ahead.
For this opportunity. Well, Mr. Mike Husell already got the similar question, but as the SDGs are set to conclude in 2030, I'm curious about your vision for the future. So my question is, what values do you believe should guide the next generation of the global development agenda? And if you could give a name to the post-2030 development goals, like MDGs or SDGs, what would it be? And what do you think should be the most important priority?
Thank you to both the Seo-Yongs. Who would like to respond? There are two questions, one about the issues that have been overlooked that the young generation should pay attention to, and the second one, what's going to succeed the Sustainable Development Goals. Rebecca, I believe, you put up, and Makisel and Maria, and let's do it quickly so we can get to our concluding statements. Thank you.
Let me take the second question and say that I think that the MDGs and the SDGs have been very important. But let's remember that the date of 2030 is arbitrary. And if we look at the SDGs, only 18% is in a track to be complied by 2030. So the agenda won't be finished by 2030. So I think that the priority has to be to support countries that want to continue with the SDGs because they have not been a reality in their countries yet, to be able to comply, to implement the agenda that continues to be an important agenda. And my second point is that we have to go beyond GDP. So it's a matter also of how we measure development. And I am an economist, so it's rare for an economist to say GDP doesn't tell you the story. We have to measure well development so we can take the right policy decisions that will benefit people. So these are my 2 points.
Thank you for those 2 points. I've just been informed we've only got 3 minutes left. I'm sorry, I thought we had extended the session, but we only have 3 minutes. So let's just get another quick response from, I believe, Makisel, and then I'm going to start with the concluding sentiments at the end. Yes.
Très bien. Alors,
Very well.
Pour la question sur la
So, regarding the questions about the overlooked issues that young people should pay more attention to, I think not only the young people, but also the governments, the public powers, and the universal organization that is the United Nations. I believe that the issue of education is a fundamental issue, which is a transversal issue, and it allows us to comprehend the entire issue of artificial intelligence. We knew the digital divide at the beginning of the year 2000. Nowadays, because we had a paradigm shift regarding education, Asian countries are showing us the way. After the Second World War, all the Asian countries changed the paradigm in their education, which made them able to become developed countries. And that is why those challenges of education will ensure the future of the younger generation to give jobs and to give perspectives.
Thank you, merci. That's right. Education and, of course, Asia leading the way there. Now we have concluding statements, and I should say that there was a lottery draw that was conducted before our session here on stage so that you could all have your concluding statements. They were meant to be 90 seconds. I don't know if we've got 90 seconds. Do we have 90 seconds for each individual for their concluding statement still? I hope we do. Okay, so let's start. The draw was won first speaker, Rebecca. So let's go with you, Rebecca.
Thank you. Well, I have to say that I am running because I care, because I think we can be better, because I believe in the principles and the charter of the UN, because I think I am the best candidate, and because the story of my family have taught me what war takes away from you and what peace can give you back. So my life and the story of my life has gone through the three pillars of the UN. I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe on peace, on development, and in human rights. That's the story of my family. That's the story of myself. I've been in government. I've been the coordinator of the social and economic sectors in my country. I know what is to take decisions under pressure in very difficult circumstances with a lot of financial constraints. So I want to do that for the UN. I think I can really drive the UN to be better, to be relevant, to refocus, to be successful, and that I can bridge between countries and people to reach the consensus and the trust needed for that to happen. So
Thank you.
Skepticism is okay. Fatalism is not acceptable. We have to have hope in the future, and I think that I can do that.
Great concluding statement. Next up, Maria.
Well, I am running for the position of Secretary General because I believe in the UN. I think the UN continues to be the best institutional creation of humankind. It is a human-made organization, so I'm a strong believer that manifest destiny for the UN not working, we cannot accept that. I also believe in a phrase that a Nobel laureate said, the opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference. It's because I don't want to be indifferent. I think I can contribute to make the UN better, more efficient, leaner, more service-oriented, and to really touch and transform the lives of people on the ground. The leader that the UN needs is a Renaissance leader. It's a person that understands development, that has worked on the peace and security field, that is committed to the human rights agenda. My entire career shows that. The ability to bring the peace and security pillar together with the development and together with the human rights pillar. Being a Minister of Defense, a foreign minister, being a Minister of Culture and Natural Heritage, ambassador in New York, ambassador in Geneva, president of the UN General Assembly, I think provides the credentials for me to serve the organization, to make it better, and to make it more connected to the people it serves.
Well said. Thank you, Maria. Carolyn.
Thank you. 80 years after the formation of the UN and the opportunity to reflect, I believe that the UN has delivered and continues to deliver. The Charter remains as relevant as it was in 1945 as the standard for stability and for hope for future generations. But we have big challenges, and the UN must change, the UN must adapt. And we should be able to do this together. And so I believe that this Jeju Forum should reignite our march for peace and prosperity, and that together we must remake a UN that learns from its past, that is fit for today, and that is ready for the future. And I'm running because I believe that my experience as a Minister of Foreign Affairs, a Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, an international civil servant with the UN, and now a permanent representative walking the halls of the UN and in the negotiation room for the last 5.5 years, that I can run this race together with you, and we could make a better UN.
Thank you, Carolyn. And Macky Sall.
Thank you very much. I can say after my skills, I'm not running for a career. I'm running for impact. As a former head of state, 12 years in my country, leading also AU, and working individually with all leaders of the G20 and getting the position of Africa as a permanent member of G20 shows me it is possible to rebuild trust with UN. Et donc, je voudrais dire que mon engagement en tant qu'homme politique, en tant que leader,
as a leader, as a policeman, is that in Africa in general there are lots of conflicts. And I can still serve the peoples from the United Nations with the purpose of making a stronger, more resilient organization, a reformed organization, especially with the trust that we need to rebuild the trust among the member states, and of course the trust and dialogue that we must rebuild among the permanent members of the Security Council. I believe that is the participation and contribution that I can bring to the table.
Merci. And concluding remarks, finally, Rafael.
Thank you very much. This election or selection, in my opinion, is arguably one of the most consequential ones we have had in the history of the United Nations. Everything we have discussed, everything we have heard today only confirm that in this world fragmented, as the title of the conference says, with the perhaps for the first time situation where the UN in itself is being questioned, the institution is being put between brackets, its future is in doubt, then the choice of the person who is going to be leading this organization over the next few years becomes a dramatic choice for all of us. It's not because the UN is there and there is a charter and the charter is a timeless piece for all of us that the UN is going to be called to fulfill its role. It's when the UN can add value, is when the UN can solve problems that we are going to see that. And I've seen that personally in the battlefields of the war, protecting a nuclear power plant from a disaster We have seen it now when we are trying to solve one of the most intractable conflicts around the nuclear program of a country in the Middle East.
Thank you.
Multilateral institution is needed at that time. So a moment of choice, and let's make the right decision.
And the time is up. Wow. We have heard from the 5 candidates who are here with us here in Jeju. It was always going to be a struggle to keep you all on time. I have to say we're only 10 minutes over, but thank you all and best of luck to all 6 of the candidates who are vying for this very crucial role as the next Secretary General of the United Nations. As we heard from Ban Ki-moon himself, he doesn't envy you, but I'm sure you'll all do a spectacular job. Once again, a big round of applause to our candidates, please.